Hello everyone, and welcome to the new episode about editing with Darktable. In this episode, we will address a topic that was inspired by one of the comments on my videos. Someone compared me to the famous television painter Bob Ross, and that was interesting to hear because I've actually watched his show a lot on late night TV years ago. And as a photographer, I find that there's a great deal to learn from painters, particularly in how they use color, brightness, and perspective to emphasize their subject. In one of the episodes, he said something like, "You need darkness to see light." A phrase that stuck with me because it's such an elegant way to strip away the distractions in the scene and let the primary subject truly shine. Let's see now a few examples of this principle in action. Before we dive into this topic, I'd like to take a moment to present you a nice improvement, a new sharpening method that we will have in the next version of the Darktable. The method is called capture sharpening, or I think also deconvolution sharpening. So, what is capture sharpening? Capture sharpening is a method used at the early stage of photo editing to improve the details that have been lost through blurring caused by lenses and the process of converting the sensor data into the image. That can be diffraction of lenses or anti-aliasing or other blurring issues. And therefore, this is different from creative or artistic sharpening, which may be applied later to emphasize the details in the photo. So let me demonstrate that with this nice portrait. First thing that I would like to do is to take a snapshot so that we can compare photo before and after sharpening. And because capture sharpening will be applied directly after the mosaicing, it's also a part of the mosaicing module now. When we click on the mosaicing module, we have now here additional menu, capture sharpening menu, and I will open it now, and we can start sharpening. To enable it, we need to click on the first slider, and that is sharpening intensity, and I will click somewhere here, and as you can see immediately, capture sharpening using sensor data to calculate the correct radius. And now we have already sharpening applied, and we can compare it now before and after. And I'm not sure if you are able to see the difference because of the video compression, but I can see quite nice improvement in sharpness of the hair and hair here and on the eyes here. But let's say we want to also to improve the sharpness of the skin, then we can use another slider here, contrast sensitivity. And to be able to see what this slider means, I will now enable the mask for the sharpening. And as you can see, we have sharpened mostly the areas with more details. And we can now use contrast sensitivity, for example, to cover also the skin. And now I can move it towards left. And now everything is almost included in sharpening. That can be good for example, like in this case, when I want to improve also the skin, but you need to be careful because you can also introduce or sharpen the noise if you have high ISO photos. But in this case, I think it's quite nice. Let me see again. And now also the skin gets sharpened. Okay, the fourth option is corner boost. That means you can boost the corners of the image and of that way you can improve the sharpness of the corner. That can be that kind of blurring can be caused by the lenses. But in this case, I don't think we need that, so we can leave it as it is. And let me disable the mask. And of course, we have now nice sharpen, but the best way to sharpen the photo is to combine that sharpen with other sharpening options that we have here. For example, I will use now diffusion sharpen module for additional sharpening. And let me just find some typical sharpening options. For example, here, what I have chosen, the mosaicing eye filter. And now the photo is quite nicely sharpened. It's absolutely incredible how much details we can gain additionally by combining capture sharpening with other sharpening methods that we also have here as options. And maybe let me go a bit higher with the zoom, so with the hope that you can recognize the difference. And now I will also use this option so that you can see, for example, it's quite important, you see the area in the eye here, and the hair is now super nice sharp. So that's quite nice improvement that can help you to gain quite a lot of details from your photos. Okay, I think that's enough for that presentation, and now we can go back to our topic. Here we have a typical Bob Ross scene. We have a nice snowy mountain in the background, a row of trees in the middle, and the water in the foreground. And I can imagine how he creates the mountain first with his knife, black in background, and then with other colors create those areas with snow, and then uses a small brush and creates those trees with the branches, and a big brush with big sweeps back and forth to get that nice calm water. But what can we do to improve this scene? Let's take a closer look at the individual elements. And first thing we have here is the sky, and sky is quite pale without much details, and I think we can gain a little bit more interesting part of the sky just by darkening it and maybe give it some kind of saturation. And I can imagine that the sky is blue, and that will be a nice contrast to that area here of the mountain, which is sunlit. And we have differentiation in brightness and also in the color. And because the sky is quite bright, the difference is not that much to see. And also, the second element, the mountain, could also gain through that kind of contrast. We have that sunlit area and also shadow area. And I think when we increase that contrast, we will have a bit more depth of the mountain. The trees are, I don't think, that much important, because here in this scene they only improve, or they only separate the two areas. The first area with sky and mountain, and the water. And water itself is interesting because we have here the reflection of that sunlit area of the mountain, and I could also imagine different color of the water, of the reflection of the sky. So we can also increase that contrast. And therefore, I think the main element that need to be emphasized is this area with reflection. Because if we have a nice contrast between that area and the rest of the photo, we'll have a nice depth and nice color differentiation. So that will be the first thing. The second is, of course, we will also have the differentiation between sunlit area of the mountain and background, and maybe as third element, the improvement of the sky. Okay, let's get started. So let's start with lens correction and denoising. Adjust the corrections. And now I think we can darken the overall image with exposure module a little bit. And you can see immediately we have a bit more depth here. We're getting a bit more depth, but that's not enough. What we now can do, we can use color calibration module. And I would like to improve the differentiation in the color in the sky and in the sunlit area of the mountain, and also here in the reflection. So we can use channel mixer for that, something like this. And as you can see, color of the sky gets a bit more blue, and we have nice difference between that color of the sky and on the sunlit area of the mountain. And we can use next instance improve the brightness of the individual channels. For example, we can darken a little bit the blue channel, maybe like that, and increase the brightness of the red channel. And we have also improved the differentiation on the mountain, not only on the sky, but also on the mountain between that sunlit area and the shadow area, and the mountain gets more depth. And now we can go with sigmoid module and increase the overall contrast to see what we get. Maybe something like that. And I think I can also darken the sky even more, the whole area here. And we can do that maybe with another instance of color calibration module, but restrict that just on the upper half and go even more darker in the sky. Look at that now. Okay, we can now increase a little bit saturation, but only in the midtones and maybe shadows, and maybe add a bit of the vibrance here. And I think I can darken the sky even more. Then we will have nice separation between the mountain and the sky. We can use color lookup table for that. Let me use this area here first and darken it a little bit. Maybe something like that. And also maybe this area here too. So maybe this shade of blue or whatever the color that is. Yeah, now look at that. Maybe even more, something like that. You see how immediately that area with the sun lit part of this mountain pops up quite nicely. And I think we can also change just a touch the colors of the sky, of this area in the sky and also in the reflection, just by moving that, for example, that area up a little bit to the blue. That's too much, just a touch. And also this one, add some blue to that. Maybe also touch a green. That's too much. Let's go back there. Okay. And you see now, with those small adjustments, we have now nice sunlit area, and also the combined with the reflection on the water that differentiates in brightness and also in the color from the rest of the photo. And the trees itself are not that important because they only separate those two areas. And maybe we can, what we also can do, we can darken the bottom and the upper and bottom part even more without influencing the trees that much. Maybe we can use the next instance of color balance RGB, add some mask just on that middle area, something like that. To protect that, we need to toggle the polarity of the mask so that we influencing only up and bottom part of the photo. And now we can darken the photo just a touch more, something like that. Maybe even add a bit contrast. Let's see. And a touch of saturation. Yeah. Look at it now. Okay, we can use also sigmoid and increase target white so that we use the whole dynamic range. Maybe like that. And I think we're good. So let's compare that before and after. So we can start here with lens correction and take a snapshot. Go to the last step and maybe use this thing here. Look at that. Look at the difference. You see how that mountain area get more dry three-dimensionality. And also we have nice separation between sky and that nice glowing sunlit part of the mountain, which gives the mountain a quite nice depth. As you can see, the trees are not important. We have now nice separation between those two parts, and that intense sunlight is recognized also in the reflection in the water. Okay, so next example. Here we also have idyllic, calm scene with a stilt house in the middle and the bridge to that house in one quite calm environment. And the question is, what can be done with this one? When we take a closer look, we have here two main elements that are important for the photo. The first one is that house with the bridge. And the second element is the environment. We have also a quite nice sunset scene. So the question is, what of those two elements, or how to combine those two elements to get a particular atmosphere? And we can practically go in both directions. We can do a so-called high key photo and reduce the scene only to that house because the surrounding is really calm. We have a clean sky and also quite calm water. So we don't have any distractions in background. So we could do something like black and white high key photo by brightening that area, and we will have then only this part. Could be nice. But on the other side, we have also a quite nice sunset scene. And now you cannot recognize it quite good because it's quite bright and we don't have any distinctions between the blue sky and bright part and also warmer part on the horizon. And I will say we can try that one because it's interesting to see how that nice sky gets emphasized if we darken the photo. So let's do that. So first thing that we need to do is to make some corrections. We have quite high vignetting, so lens correction, maybe also denoising for the case. And I think we need to add manual vignette correction because we still have some. You can also recognize it here. So let me do that. We need to go quite high here. And as you can see, we have practically now possibility, if you want, to get that, what I have called before, high key version. If we brighten the rest of this the area here, that reflection of the sky here and sky itself, we could have a nice and clean house with a bridge. But we will see if we can combine both elements, that house and also the sky. So we will go in the opposite direction. Okay, so that means we can use now exposure module and lower the exposure of the photo. And as you can see, immediately we get some color on the horizon, which is quite nice, but that's not enough. We need to darken the blue sky so that that area on the horizon get much brighter. So practically we need a darkness to see that light. So first thing what we need to do, I would like to separate a little bit more those areas of the sky and sky reflection with horizon, with the colors of the horizon, by using next instance of color calibration with a channel mixer, as in before, something like that, so that we have a bit more separation in the colors. And now we have a bit more cyanish sky, and it's quite good separated from the reddish horizon. And then we can use next instance and do that with darkening. So what we need to darken the blue channel and maybe increase the brightness of the red channel a little bit, something like that. And now we have already a nice framing of the scene. Now we can improve the contrast. We can use sigmoid module and increase the contrast of the scene. Maybe increase the target white so that we have a bit more saturation also in the highlights. And we can now use color balance in GP and increase the saturation, overall saturation, and you will see the magic happens. Look at that sky now. That's quite nice. We can also improve it even better. I think we can use also color calibration, the color lookup table module, and I will darken the sky even more, but not that much, and maybe give this area here a bit more saturation, just a touch. And look at that now. And I think I could use sigmoid module and increase the hue preservation so that we get rid of that yellow area in the horizon. And look at that now. Let me show you before and after. So we can start with lens correction, take a snapshot and compare it side by side. Something like that. And in difference to this one, we have combined both motifs nicely. Motif of the house here, and also the difference in that area of the sky and reflection of the sky and the water and the horizon. So we have nice colors of the sunset, and in that area that is now brightened, we also have that nice house. So we have practically gained two things. First, we have a nice framing for the house, and the second thing is we also have a nice sunset here. So as you can see, when we brighten the area, or where we darken the area, or make some kind of the frame, we can increase the perception of the brightness of the scene. Okay, let's see another example. The task on this one is actually quite easy because we have already the differentiation between those leaves. We have one leaf that is brighter from the rest and differentiate a little bit in the brightness and also in the color. And we have here some details that other leaves don't have, those nice droplets of the water. So the thing what we need to do is to add some contrast between those two areas, that one leaf here and surrounding leaves. So let's do that. So as before, lens correction, denoising, and now we can increase a little bit the brightness of the photo, maybe something like that. Then we can immediately go to sigmoid and increase the contrast here so we can see how our photo is developing now, the difference. And you can see we have quite nice differentiation already, but we can increase that even better. And we can use now color balance RGB, maybe increase just a touch the saturation. I don't want to have too much saturation. Maybe not that much in the highlights, something like that. And maybe we can also increase the contrast here, that just a touch. As you can see, just by increasing the perceptual brilliance grading highlights, I'm getting quite nice details of the leaf here. But I would like to separate it even more, and we can use now contrast equalizer for that. We would like to separate a little bit the texture of the leaf, differentiate the texture from the leaf, from the background. And now I will add one mask relatively quickly. We don't need to spend that much time on masking. So real quick, let me see how the mask looks like, and now we can improve that a little bit better with the feathering and maybe also add some contrast, and I think it's enough. We don't need to be very precise. And we need of course to toggle the polarity of the mask so the rest is masked. And now we can calm down the texture of the surrounding just a touch, about there. Oh, not too much. And now, because of that, the details on this bright leaf are getting even more enhanced, or we have that illusion. And I will also like to darken the background even more. So we can use now the next instance of color balance RGB and choose the raster mask that we have used for contrast equalizer here, and just do the darkening. Well, that should be enough. And I think in this case we can also use that new sharpening method. So we can go to the mosaic module and increase the sharpening intensity, and we have got the radius. I don't think we need to do anything else here. Let me just see how much. Oh, we can go a little bit down with contrast sensitivity so that we have also the other areas in the leaf influenced. And now I can use additionally, it's already a nice sharpen. I can use additionally another sharpen method to enhance those details. Diffuse and sharpen, the mosaicing AA filter. And now that is really nice. Those droplets on the leaf are popping up quite nicely now. And that's enough. So let's see before and after. Let's start with lens correction. And of course, with the last step, as you can see, we have now quite good attention on that leaf with that droplets because we have darkened the background and also enhanced the details of the leaf itself. Okay, the next one. This scene is quite similar to the first two photos that we have edited. And here we have a nice house that differentiates from the surrounding through the color, and also have a nice sunlight that illuminates that house here. So we need to increase that difference between that illuminated house and also the surrounding to get that impression of the light intensity, because in this photo as it is, we don't have that impression that we have a nice sunlit scene because it looks quite flat. So we need to add that contrast and we need darkness to be able to get that illusion of the nice illuminated house. Okay, let's do that. So let's improve first lens correction, denoising, and maybe just a touch brightness. I don't want to go too far because we need a little bit room for the contrast, and we can actually also immediately go to the sigmoid to be able to increase that contrast to see what we get there. But as you can see, it's not enough. And procedure as in the first two photos, we'll use next distance of color calibration module and first increase the differentiation in the color in the sky and in the house, between the sky and the house, excuse me. So we can use channel mixer and do that. I will say about there. As you can see, we have now higher difference between those two areas. And with next instance, we can darken the sky and increase the brightness of the house just by decreasing the blue channel, or the brightness of the blue channel, and increasing the brightness of the red channel. As you can see, we have now nice differentiation between those two areas. But we can enhance that even more. So I can use now color lookup table and darken the sky a touch more. Not that much, but I think we can darken it a little bit more. Maybe you can increase a bit more saturation there. And I think we can also use one area here in the snow to get that illusion of the reflection of the sun in the snow. So let's use this area here and increase just a touch brightness. Yeah. And with color balance RGB, we can increase the saturation of the photo. And I think we can even more darken some area to get that framing of the house even better. So next instance of color balance RGB with drone mask, maybe something like that. And of course toggle the polarities, so maybe also increase the feathering radius, and we can darken just a touch the rest. I think we could, let me try that, we could increase the brightness of that house just a touch with color lookup table even more. Need to be careful not to go too far. Yes. You see how much more intense we perceive now that illumination of the house, just because the rest, the sky and also the shadow area here is much darker. So let's compare that with start position. I hope you can see now the big difference. It's really a quite nice example how you really need the darkness to be able to enhance the brighter areas. If we just brighten the whole image, we wouldn't have that nice distinction, that nice perception of the brightness, because everything is equally bright. But because we have that differentiation, we have that quite dark areas, now we perceive that house much brighter. And of course we have also the differentiation in the colors, which increase that separation of the house and the surrounding. Okay, the last one. In this example, we will take a little bit unconventional approach to properly set the scene for our main character here, our wild hare. And as you can see, he has his own spotlight, and we will take advantage of this to give him his own stage. So let's get started. So lens correction and denoising. Oh, lens are not recognized, doesn't matter. We don't need to correct that much. So we can disable it. And now we need to darken everything that is not in that area with the sunlight. So we can use now first next instance of the exposure module and use parametric mask and choose maybe this part here, increase that until with the highlights together, so that you have something like that. And of course I would also like to increase the feathering radius. And now we need to toggle the polarity of the mask, because we want to darken the rest and not to brighten this area. And we also need to exclude this part with the sky. So first thing, we can toggle the polarity, and we can add one more mask. We'll use drone mask and add it here to include that area. And of course, what we also need to do, we need to go to the group exposure 1 and use inverted shape. And now that will be included in the mask. So now we can darken the whole area. Let me disable the mask. And now this is a first step. And now we can go to sigmoid module and increase a little bit the contrast. As you can see, we can immediately see the scene with the haze a bit better. We can increase also target white so that we don't lose the saturation in that area. And I will also use color balance RGB and increase the brightness in the highlights here with perceptual brilliance grading, and maybe also a bit of saturation. But we still need to darken a little bit the sky area. So first thing what I can do is I can use color calibration and darken the blue and brighten a little bit the red channel, maybe also darken a little bit the green, because we need this area to be quite bright and rest darker. As a first step, and second step, we can also use color lookup table to darken a little bit of those clouds. So first I will click somewhere here and darken that, maybe also there, and darken this area also a little bit. Let's see how far, maybe here, something like that. And it looks now much better, but we need to improve that even more. And by the way, I think we need to restrict that darkening of the sky only on the upper part, so that this area don't be influenced. Maybe something like that. Okay. Okay, we now can increase the brightness a little bit overall, just a touch, and maybe also this area. And I think we need one more try to darken the sky even more. So we will use color balance HUB one more instance and add a simple mask. Something like that, and darken it. Let's see, how far should we go? A little bit feathering. And what we've practically done, we have created so-called American night. When you use the daylight or night scene. And we need to improve a little bit the details here. So I will use contrast equalizer and calm down the scene a touch. Maybe that far. And we also only want to calm down the upper part of the brightness. So we can also use darken blend mode so that the darker parts didn't get influenced that much. And we have nice and calm scene now. And let me think. I think we can increase a bit more this area here with haze. A touch more. Yeah. And I think we can also colorize the scene a little bit. So I will use a next instance of the color balance HUB, go to 4-ways tab, and maybe give the background some kind of colorization, and maybe also the midtones. That's fine, nice. Yeah, that looks cool. And maybe one more instance, because I would like to darken the rest even more to get that impression of the spotlight. So we need to mask this area, invert that mask, and darken the rest. Yeah. That's cool. And now our haze has his own stage, but his own light. Let me increase a bit more that target white so that we have a bit more saturation also in the highlights. That's so cool. Yeah. And now when we compare that with original, let me do that. I don't know, do we start maybe by orientation, take a snapshot and go to the last step, and the difference is huge. Of course, this scene is not realistic, but you don't need to be realistic. The point is to get some, to get your main subject pop up, and in this case we have do that by creating practically artificially a night scene. And whatever you think about that, but I think it's really cool. So you don't need to be realistic if you want to enhance that your motive. That is what also the painters are doing. So you can learn from them. And as you can see, because we have darkened everything, we need the darkness. You see how now this area here practically have that nice brightness intensity. Okay, I think that is enough for this episode, and if you have some questions, please be free to ask in comment section or go to the pixels.us discussion forum and ask your questions there. And I hope you have learned something and maybe it was an interesting episode for you. Thank you for watching, and until the next time.